The headlights sliced through the motel parking lot, freezing her against the passenger side of my rig. Her hand flew to her mouth, and her whisper was so quiet, so full of dread, it was louder than any scream. "Oh God, Sam. That's his truck." It all started with the heat. The kind of Arizona heat that makes the air shimmer over the asphalt and promises to cook you right in your seat if you stop moving for too long. I was hauling a load of California almonds east on the I-10, headed for a distributor in San Antonio. A run I'd done 100 times, a ribbon of concrete so familiar I could drive it in my sleep. The desert becomes a kind of moving meditation after a while. The saguaros stand there like old, prickly men waving you on, their arms frozen in a century-long hello, and the sky is so big and empty it can swallow your thoughts whole. You stop thinking about bills or ex-wives or the friend who drove off into the horizon and never came back. You just think about the white lines, the temperature gauge, and the next cup of coffee. My Freightliner, my Cascadia, she was running a little hot. Nothing serious, just a whisper of complaint in the engine's hum, a needle creeping a few degrees higher than I liked. It was enough to make me want to get it checked before I hit the long, dark, empty stretch through West Texas, a place where a breakdown means you become a feast for the silence. So I pulled off at an exit that promised diesel and a 24-hour mechanic, a place called the Dusty Lizard Truck Stop. It looked like it had been coughed up by the desert and forgotten. The gravel lot was big enough for 30 rigs, maybe more if you didn't mind getting cozy, and it was pockmarked with oil stains that looked like old battle scars. The diner had a buzzing neon sign of a lizard sipping something from a martini glass, its green tail flickering erratically. The motel next door had a flickering VAC NCY sign that looked like it had given up halfway through the word, too tired to even try anymore. I eased the Cascadia into a spot near the garage, the air brakes hissing like a tired snake. I left my rig with a mechanic named Gus who had more grease on his face than in his hair and a handshake like a vice grip. He squinted at the engine, grunted a few times, and told me it'd be a few hours. "Water pump's lookin' tired," he'd mumbled, wiping a grimy hand on an even grimmer rag. "Could be a seal, could be the bearing. Gotta see if I can get her patched up or if I need a new one from Tucson. Either way, you ain't going nowhere fast." That was fine by me. Night driving is my preference. The world gets simpler when it's just you, your headlights, and the white line spooling out in front of you like a story with no end. Daytime is for dealing with the world, the four-wheelers cutting you off, the dispatchers wanting to know your ETA down to the second, the sun beating down on the cab turning it into a greenhouse. Night is for escaping it. I walked into the diner, and the cool blast of overworked air conditioning felt like a baptism. It was a shock after the furnace outside. The place smelled of stale coffee, bacon grease, and the faint, sweet scent of bleach trying its damnedest to cover up the first two. It wasn't working. I took a seat at the counter, the red vinyl cracked and showing its yellow foam guts like a wound. And that's when I saw her. She was the waitress. Maybe late 20s, early 30s, it was hard to tell. She had tired eyes, the color of a faded blue sky after a long, hot day, and dark hair pulled back in a messy ponytail that had probably started the day neat and tidy. There was a weariness about her, the kind you see on people who've been standing on their feet for 12 hours, but there was something else, too. A tension in her shoulders, a way she'd glance towards the door every time the little bell above it chimed, a little jolt running through her like a stray current. She was pretty, in the way a desert flower is pretty, a little worn by the elements, but surviving, defiant, and holding onto its color in a world of brown and gray. She came over, wiping the counter with a damp cloth that had seen better days. "What can I get for you, hon?" Her voice was soft, with a little rasp to it, like she'd been talking or yelling or maybe just breathing dust all day. "Coffee, black. And whatever the pie of the day is, if it's not cherry." I've got nothing against cherry pie, but it reminds me of a roadside diner in Nebraska and a promise I couldn't keep. Some flavors just get stuck to memories you'd rather forget. A small smile touched her lips, but it didn't reach her eyes. Those stayed wary. "Apple. And the coffee's fresh. I just made a pot." She moved with an efficiency that told me she'd been doing this a long time, her body knowing the steps even if her mind was 1,000 miles away. She came back with a heavy ceramic mug that felt good in my hand and a slice of pie that looked a damn sight better than I expected, with a lattice crust and a sprinkle of cinnamon. The apples were still firm, not cooked to mush. Someone in the kitchen cared, at least a little. "You a driver?" she asked, leaning against the counter opposite me. The diner was slow. Just me, two old-timers in a booth arguing about fuel prices, and the cook visible through the pass-through, a big man with a sweaty brow, reading a newspaper and ignoring the world. That's me, I said, taking a sip of the coffee. It was good. Not just gas station good, but actually good. Strong, black, and honest. Hauling nuts to Texas. Trucks getting a little TLC next door. The Cascadia? The dark blue one? I nodded, surprised she noticed. Most people see a truck, they don't see the truck. To them it's just a roadblock, a big metal box in their way. It's a nice rig, she said, her eyes distant for a second, looking at something over my shoulder that wasn't there. My husband, he's always wanted to drive. He loves the idea of seeing the country. The freedom of it. But he serves our country another way. There it was. The mention of a husband. It always comes up, sooner or later. Sometimes it's a warning, a don't get any ideas sign. Sometimes it's just a fact, a piece of their life they share. With her, it felt like something else. A line drawn in the sand, but one she'd drawn to protect herself, not to keep me out. It felt practiced, like a line she'd said so many times it had lost its meaning but not its purpose. Oh yeah? What branch? I asked, keeping it casual, stirring my coffee even though it needed no stirring. Army, she said, a little too quickly. He's deployed. Afghanistan. She busied herself refilling the sugar dispensers, her back to me. The way she said Afghanistan sounded like a word she'd learned from a movie, a place on a map she couldn't point to. Something about it felt rehearsed, a script she'd memorized. I've met 100 military wives and girlfriends over the years at truck stops and diners near bases from Fort Bragg to Fort Hood. There's a certain pride they have, a steel in their spine, mixed with a specific kind of worry that lives permanently in their eyes. It's a heavy thing, loving a soldier. You can see the weight of it in their posture, in the way they check their phones. With her, it felt different. It felt like she was carrying a weight, all right, but it wasn't the one she was describing. It was something closer to home. I didn't push it. It's not my business. Lord knows I've got enough of my own ghosts riding shotgun without inviting anyone else's. My own marriage ended in a quiet, sad explosion of unspoken resentments and roads not taken. I know what it is to build a wall of words around yourself. So I just ate my pie, it was damn good pie, and drank my coffee, and we made small talk. Her name was Sarah. She was from back east, Pennsylvania, but had been in Arizona for a few years. She liked the dry heat, she said, because you always knew what to expect. No surprises. I told her a story about getting caught in a freak blizzard in Wyoming, having to chain up on the shoulder of I-80 with the wind howling like a banshee in the snow so thick you couldn't see the front of your own hood. She listened, her chin resting in her hand, and for a minute, the tension in her shoulders seemed to ease. The lines around her eyes softened. She was a good listener. The kind that makes you want to keep talking. Gus the mechanic was, predictably, slower than he promised. The few hours turned into him needing that new water pump from Tucson, and it wouldn't get there till morning on the parts truck. Supply chain, he grunted, as if that explained everything from the price of diesel to the state of the world. I wasn't in a rush. The dispatcher could yell all he wanted, broken down is broken down. It's an act of God, or at least an act of Freightliner. I told Gus to call me when it was in. I could have gotten a room at the motel, but I've always preferred sleeping in my own bunk. After my divorce in 2014, when the house I'd helped build became just a place I used to live, the cab of my truck became my only real home. It's my space. The one place in the world that's entirely mine, where every worn spot on the seat and every coffee stain on the dash is part of my story. So I just told Sarah I'd be back for dinner. Don't sell all the apple pie, I'd said. She'd almost smiled for real that time. That evening, the desert cooled off enough to breathe. The sky was a deep, impossible indigo, littered with more stars than you can ever see in a city. The diner was a little busier. A few other drivers, a family on vacation with kids whining from sunburnt exhaustion. Sarah was darting back and forth, a real pro, balancing plates on her arm, refilling drinks, taking orders. I took the same seat at the counter. She saw me and brought my coffee without me having to ask. Looks like you're my permanent resident, she joked, her voice a little breathless. Just till my rig is roadworthy again, I said. It's a good excuse to have more of this coffee. We fell back into easy conversation in the lulls between her orders. She asked me about the road, about the places I'd seen. I told her about the green, rolling hills of Oregon that smell like pine needles and rain. I told her about the soul-crushing emptiness of Nevada on Route 50, the loneliest road in America. I told her about the California coastline, how the ocean looks like a sheet of hammered silver at dawn. I kept it light. I didn't tell her about the bone-deep loneliness that can settle in on those long stretches, or the way every state holds a memory of someone you had to leave behind. I didn't tell her about the folded, worn picture of a woman from Montana I keep tucked in my logbook, a reminder of a different kind of breakdown, one that had nothing to do with an engine and everything to do with my own cowardice. As the dinner rush died down and the diner emptied out again, a man came in. He was big, with a fleshy face and a county sheriff's deputy uniform stretched tight across his gut, the fabric straining at the buttons. He moved with a slow, deliberate arrogance, like he owned the place. He didn't look at the menu board. He just stared at Sarah. "Evenin', Sarah," he said, his voice a low rumble that didn't fit the friendly word. I saw her spine go rigid. Every bit of warmth and life that had crept into her during our conversation vanished like a puff of smoke. "Rick," she said, her voice flat, dead. "What do you want?" "Just checking in. Making sure everything's all right out here on the edge of my county." His eyes slid over to me, lingered for a second with a look of bored contempt, then went back to her. It wasn't a friendly check-in. It was an inventory. A claim. He was looking at her like she was a piece of property he'd left unattended. "Everything's fine," she said, not looking at him. She started wiping down the gleaming stainless steel of the coffee machines, her movements jerky and too fast. "That's good," he said, his gaze still locked on her, a smug little smile playing on his lips. "Wouldn't want you to be lonely out here. A woman all on her own, husband overseas fighting for our freedom, it's a dangerous world." The words hung in the air, thick and menacing. He was using the same story she told me, the one about the soldier husband, but he was twisting it. He wasn't repeating her lie, he was mocking it. Turning her shield into a weapon against her. He was marking his territory for my benefit, the outsider. He finally gave a little nod. A gesture of supreme self-satisfaction, and turned and left. The bell on the door jangled mockingly behind him. The diner was silent for a moment, save for the hum of the refrigerator. Sarah stood with her back to the room, her shoulders shaking almost imperceptibly. "You okay?" I asked, my voice quieter than I intended. She took a deep, shuddering breath and turned around, forcing a brittle smile that was painful to look at. "Yeah. Fine. He's just a regular. Thinks he's a big shot because of the uniform. But I saw it." When she reached up to push a stray strand of hair from her face, the sleeve of her pale pink uniform shirt slid up just an inch. On the inside of her wrist was a dark, ugly bruise, the mottled purple and yellow-green kind that comes from being grabbed too hard, from fingers digging into flesh. She saw me see it. Her eyes widened in panic, and she pulled her sleeve down fast, her face flushing with a deep, burning shame. And in that moment, she reminded me of someone else. Not my ex-wife, not the woman from Montana. It was a memory connected to my friend, Daniel. The one who disappeared. The ghost who rides with me on every run. It was years ago, maybe 8, 9. We were parked at a yard in Arkansas for a 34-hour reset. Daniel was my best friend on the road. We'd come up together, two young guys from Oklahoma who thought driving a big rig was the ultimate freedom. He was the talker, the charmer, always had a joke and a smile that could get him out of a speeding ticket or into a pretty girl's heart. I was the quiet one, happy to listen. He'd been seeing this woman, a bartender named Chloe from a little town off the highway. He was head over heels, talking about maybe even quitting the road for her. But every time I saw them together, she had that same haunted look Sarah had. That same flinch when he moved too fast, even though Daniel wouldn't hurt a fly. She had a sadness in her eyes that his jokes couldn't reach. I remember we were sitting on the steps of my rig, drinking warm beer as the sun went down over a field of soybeans. I said to him, "Danny, something's not right with her. She looks like a caged bird." He'd gotten defensive, his jaw tight. "She's just had a rough go of it, Sam. Her ex is a piece of work. A real bastard. But she's with me now." I'll protect her. I can fix it. He was so sure he could be her white knight. So sure that love was enough. A month later, Daniel was supposed to meet me in Flagstaff to run a convoy load up to Salt Lake. He never showed up. His phone went straight to voicemail. His truck was found abandoned a week later at a scenic overlook in New Mexico, not far from the Arizona border. It was clean. Too clean. No signs of a struggle. His wallet and keys were on the passenger seat. His logbook was up to date. He was just gone. Vanished off the face of the earth. The cops asked me about Chloe. Turns out her ex wasn't an ex at all. They were still married. And he was a nasty son of a bitch with a temper and, according to the local whispers, connections. They never proved anything. They couldn't even prove foul play. To the law, Daniel was just another person who walked away from his life. But I knew better. I wondered if he got in over his head trying to be that white knight. I wondered if my warning had been too little, too late. The guilt of it is a quiet hum under the surface of my days, a frequency only I can hear. Looking at Sarah, with that bruise on her wrist and that practiced lie about a husband in the army, I felt that old, cold dread wash over me. I wasn't going to make the same mistake twice. I wasn't going to just watch from the sidelines. I finished my burger, which I hadn't really tasted. I paid my tab and left a 20 on the counter, enough for the meal and a decent tip. My truck's in the back of the lot, I said quietly, not looking at anyone else. The blue Cascadia. I sleep in the cab. If you need anything at all, just knock on the driver's side door. I'm a light sleeper. She just nodded, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. She didn't say thank you, but she didn't have to. We understood each other. It was an offer of sanctuary. No questions asked. I went back to my rig. The silence of the cab was a comfort. I sat in the driver's seat for a long time, watching the diner's neon lizard flicker. The last of the customers left. The cook came out for a smoke, a lonely silhouette against the light. Finally, the lights inside went out. A few minutes later, Sarah emerged, walking quickly, almost running, towards an old, beat-up sedan at the far end of the lot. She got in and drove off, not towards the motel, but back towards the highway, heading east into the darkness. I felt a knot of unease in my stomach. The deputy, Rick, had said he was just checking on his county. This was his county. He was out there somewhere in the dark with her. The next morning, I was up before the sun, nursing a cup of coffee I'd made in my own pot. The desert at dawn is a holy thing, all quiet pastels and long shadows. Gus called around 8. The part was in. He'd have me on the road by noon. I walked over to the diner for some breakfast, a knot of worry in my gut. I didn't know if she'd even be there. But she was. She looked worse than the day before. The shadows under her eyes were darker, like bruises. She moved like a ghost, her feet barely making a sound. "Morning," I said, taking my usual seat. The diner was empty. "Morning, Sam." She poured my coffee. Her hand was trembling so much the cup rattled in the saucer. "You all right?" I asked gently. She tried to smile, but it crumbled. She shook her head, and a single tear welled up and rolled down her cheek. She glanced around the empty diner, at the door, out the window, then leaned closer, her voice a desperate, broken whisper. "He's not in the army, Sam." I just looked at her, my hands flat on the counter. I waited. My husband. He's not in Afghanistan. He's Rick. The air went out of my lungs. The deputy. The big man with the possessive eyes and the uniform that gave him power. It all made a sickening kind of sense. "We're married," she whispered, another tear tracing a path through her foundation. "I left him a month ago. I came here. I thought he wouldn't find me. It's so far from where we lived. I got this job, I was saving up to go further. Maybe Oregon. You said it was green there." The whole pathetic, terrifying story came tumbling out in hushed, frantic whispers. He was a pillar of the community in their small town a few hundred miles away. Charming, funny, always sponsoring the Little League team. And behind closed doors, he was a monster. controlling, jealous, violent. The bruise on her wrist was from last week, when he'd shown up at her small rental apartment unannounced, having tracked her down. He hadn't known she worked here at the truck stop yet, but his visit to the diner last night was a warning. A show of power. He was closing in, enjoying the game. The army story, she choked out a sob, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. I started saying it. It was easier. It explains why I'm alone. It keeps men from, And it made me feel safer, like there was this good, honorable man out there somewhere, protecting me from afar, instead of him. I felt a surge of cold anger. The kind of anger I reserve for bullies and liars and men who use their strength to break things smaller than them. The scar on my jaw, from a long ago bar fight in Lubbock over a man treating his girlfriend the same way, began to throb with the memory. I'd learned then that getting involved is messy, that it can get you hurt. But I'd learned from Daniel that not getting involved can be worse. It can get someone else killed. Why don't you go to the police? I asked, even though I already knew the answer. It was a stupid question. She let out a bitter, humorless laugh that sounded like breaking glass. He is the police, Sam. In our town, he and the sheriff are golfing buddies. Out here, he's still got the badge. Who would they believe? Me, a runaway waitress with no family here? Or Deputy Rick Anderson, a respected officer of the law? He's told everyone I'm unstable. That I have episodes. That I need help. He's laid the groundwork for years. He's smart. She was trapped. A spiderweb woven by a man with a badge and a gun. My truck was almost ready. I could just get in it and drive away. Point my nose east and forget I ever saw her. It would be the smart thing to do. The professional thing. Stay out of it. But I looked at her face, her tear-streaked, terrified face, and I saw the ghost of Daniel's girl. I saw the ghost of every woman I'd ever seen stuck in a bad spot on the side of some forgotten highway. And I knew I couldn't drive away. My truck will be ready around noon, I said, my voice steady, surprising myself with its calm. My route takes me through El Paso, San Antonio, all the way to Houston if I need to. There's a lot of country between here and there. A lot of places a person could get lost and start over. Her eyes widened. Hope is a dangerous thing. It's a flicker of light that can make the darkness seem even deeper if it goes out. But the lack of it is a guaranteed death of its own. You'd do that, she whispered, her voice full of disbelief. For me? I've got an empty passenger seat, I said. It wasn't a yes. It was an offer. A door held open. The choice had to be hers. To step through it was a bigger risk than staying put, in some ways. He'll look for me, she said, the fear creeping back in, warring with the hope. He'll put out an alert on my car. Leave the car, I said, my mind already working, clicking through the logistics. Keys on the seat. Walk away from it. Pack one bag with whatever you can't live without. Cash, IDs, pictures, whatever. Things that don't have a tracking device. Meet me behind the mechanic's garage at 1 o'clock sharp. If you're there, you're there. If you're not, I'm gone. No questions asked either way. I finished my coffee in one long gulp, the hot liquid scalding my throat. I paid for my breakfast, put the cash right in her hand. Be careful, Sarah. I walked out into the blinding sun, the heat already oppressive. The decision was hers now. I was just a ride. A temporary escape. But maybe, just maybe, it would be enough. I spent the next few hours on edge, a low-grade hum of adrenaline in my veins. I settled up with Gus, who'd managed to replace the water pump and a few belts. He grumbled about the bill, I grumbled about the time, it was the ancient ritual of driver and mechanic. I did a slow, deliberate walk around of my rig, checking the tires with a thumper, checking the lines, the fifth-wheel connection. All the things I always do, but this time my movements were just a cover for my real activity, scanning the lot. I saw Rick's cruiser drive by slowly on the access road, a shark circling the perimeter. He was watching. Waiting. He knew her car was here. He was just waiting for her shift to end. My heart was pounding a heavy, clumsy rhythm against my ribs. This was stupid. This was the kind of trouble that gets a man's commercial driver's license suspended, or worse. The kind of trouble that ends with a body in a ditch and a truck driver in a prison cell. I thought about Daniel, about his empty truck on that scenic overlook. I thought about the woman from Montana, and how I'd left her standing at a bus station because I was too afraid of staying in one place, too afraid of what she might mean. My whole life was about moving on. But this felt different. This wasn't about me running from something. This was about helping someone else run to something. To safety. To a chance. At 5 minutes to 1, I had the engine idling, the air brakes hissing impatiently. I was ready to go. My hands were slick on the wheel. I looked in my mirror, towards the dusty, sun-baked patch of dirt behind the garage. No one. The smart move, the self-preservation move, was to put it in gear and roll out. Forget the whole thing. Be just another truck rolling down the highway. Then I saw her. A small figure, hurrying along the chain-link fence line, keeping to the shadows cast by a row of discarded tires. She was carrying a single duffel bag. My breath caught in my chest. She'd come. She'd made the choice. She ran the last few feet, her face pale and set. I leaned across the cab and threw the passenger door open. She climbed in, breathless, and slammed it shut. She didn't say a word, just clutched the bag in her lap like a life raft. Her knuckles white. "Seatbelt," I said, my voice gruffer than I meant it to be. The fear made it sharp. I put the truck in gear and pulled out of the lot, slow and easy, just another driver heading out. I didn't speed up. I didn't look back. I turned onto the on-ramp for I-10 East, merging smoothly into the river of traffic. We were maybe 2 miles down the road when she finally spoke, her voice a thin thread of sound. "Thank you." "Don't thank me yet," I said, my eyes glued to my mirrors, scanning every car, every truck. "We're not clear." For the first hour, we rode in silence. The desert slid by, indifferent and ancient. Sarah just stared out the window, watching the world she knew disappear behind her. I could feel the tension radiating off her like heat. Every time we passed a state trooper or a county sheriff's car, she would flinch and shrink down in the seat. "He won't call it in right away," she finally said, thinking out loud, her voice stronger now. "His pride won't let him. He'll want to find me himself. When he finds the car is empty and I'm not at my apartment, he'll start searching. He'll check the bus stations, the train station in Tucson. He'll call the one friend I had. He won't be looking for a long-haul truck," I said, trying to reassure her, and maybe myself. "To him, I'm just another piece of the scenery." Anonymous. As the afternoon wore on and the miles dissolved behind us, she started to relax a little. The rigid line of her spine softened. She asked me about the truck, all the buttons and gauges on the dash. I explained what they did, how the engine brake worked, how to talk on the CB radio. It was a distraction, a way of filling the cab with normal things, not just her fear and my regret. She told me about her life before Rick. She'd been a nursing student in Pennsylvania, top of her class. She was smart. She wanted to help people. Then she met him on a vacation to Arizona. He was charming, heroic in his uniform. He'd swept her off her feet. By the time the charm wore off and the real man emerged, the jealous rages, the control, the casual cruelty, she was already married, isolated, and 1,000 miles from home. "He told me once," she said, her voice barely audible over the hum of the tires, "that I was his property. That the paper we signed at the courthouse was a bill of sale. And the scary part is, Sam, I think he really believes it." The sun began to set, painting the sky in fiery shades of orange and purple that bled into a deep violet. The beauty of it felt like a mockery of the ugliness we were running from. We were approaching Tucson. I needed to fuel up. I couldn't make it to El Paso without it. It was a risk, stopping, but a bigger risk was running out of fuel in the middle of nowhere. "We'll stop at a big place on the east side of the city," I told her, my voice low. "A Flying J or a Pilot. Lots of trucks, lots of people. Anonymity in numbers. You stay in the cab. Keep the doors locked. I'll be as quick as I can." She nodded, her face tight with anxiety again. The brief respite was over. The hunt was still on. The stop went smoothly. It was a huge, brightly lit place, a city unto itself. I filled the tanks, the diesel fumes sharp in the night air. I grabbed a couple of roller grill hot dogs that had been sweating under a heat lamp for God knows how long, and 2 bottles of water. I was walking back to my rig, feeling a flicker of hope, feeling like maybe we'd actually pulled this off, when my phone buzzed in my pocket. It was an unknown number. My first instinct was to ignore it. But some cold, hard instinct made me answer. Hello? Is this Sam McCarty? The voice was calm, controlled, and utterly devoid of warmth. It was him. Who's asking? I said, my voice tight. I kept walking towards my truck, trying to look casual, just another driver on the phone. This is Deputy Sheriff Anderson. Pinal County. I believe you gave my wife a ride this afternoon. My blood ran cold. The hot dogs in my hand suddenly felt like lead weights. He'd found me. Not by sight, but by data. He'd run the plates of every truck that left the Dusty Lizard. I don't know what you're talking about, I said. My hand on the cool metal door of my cab. Oh, I think you do, he said. The calm in his voice was more terrifying than any shout. A blue Freightliner Cascadia, license plate number, well, I've got all that. See, Sarah's a sick woman, Mr. McCarty. She gets confused. She runs off sometimes. I'm just trying to get her the help she needs. I'm sure you understand. You seem like a reasonable man. She seemed fine to me, I said, pulling myself up into the cab, the phone pressed hard against my ear. That's what she wants you to think. She's very manipulative. Now, you can make this easy. You can pull over at the next exit, and I'll come and collect her. No fuss, no paperwork. Or, we can make it hard. I can report my official vehicle as stolen, say you carjacked me and kidnapped my wife while I was in the diner. Who do you think every cop in Arizona is going to be looking for then? A decorated police officer, or a long-haul trucker with a record? I froze. A record. He must have run my plates, my license, everything. The bar fight in Lubbock. It wasn't much, just a misdemeanor assault charge from 15 years ago that got pleaded down, but it was there. It was a smudge on a clean sheet. And he would use it to paint me as a violent criminal, a kidnapper. He was a cop. He knew how the system worked. He knew which words to use. Where are you? I asked, my mind racing, trying to calculate angles, time, distance. Closer than you think, he said. Just do the right thing, Mr. McCarty. Pull over. He hung up. I tossed the phone onto the passenger seat. Sarah looked at my face and knew immediately. It was him, wasn't it? I nodded, my mouth dry as dust. He's behind us. He knows who I am. He's threatening to say I kidnapped you. Panic flared in her eyes, wild and desperate. Oh God, Sam, I'm so sorry. I've ruined you. We have to pull over. You have to tell them I forced you, that I lied to you. No, I said, the word coming out like a piece of gravel. I looked in my mirror. Far back, maybe a mile or two, weaving through the slower traffic, I could see a single pair of headlights closing the distance way too fast. They weren't the headlights of a Crown Vic cruiser. They were higher up. Bigger. Not a patrol car with a light bar. Something else. He's not in his patrol car, I said, a new piece of the puzzle clicking into place. He's trying to handle this himself. Off the books. That was the first twist. He wasn't using the law. He was using the threat of the law to act outside of it. This wasn't an officer recovering a missing person. This was a man hunting his prey, and he wanted to do it in the dark, where there were no witnesses. And then it hit me. The second twist. The real, ugly reason he couldn't let her go. The reason this was more than a domestic dispute. Sarah, I said, my voice low and urgent, my eyes flickering between the road ahead and the rapidly approaching headlights in my mirror. You told me he was a pillar of the community. That he isolated you. But you were a nursing student. You're smart. What do you know? What did you see that makes you more than just an inconvenient wife? She stared at me, her face a mask of confusion and fear. What do you mean? This isn't about his pride, I said, the truth of it landing in my gut like a punch. This is about his freedom. He's not just afraid of you leaving him. He's afraid of what you'll say when you're free. What do you know, Sarah? What did you find? Tears streamed down her face as the final wall of her denial crumbled. Her voice was a ragged whisper. He was meeting people. Late at night. Out on the county roads. Men in fancy cars with out-of-state plates. There was always money afterwards. So much money. Cash. He kept it in a safe in the garage. I found it once. I asked him about it, and that's when he broke my arm. It all clicked into place. The lonely desert highways. The position of authority. The unexplained cash. Rick wasn't just an abusive husband. He was a dirty cop. Smuggling, protection rackets, maybe drugs, maybe people. It didn't matter. Sarah wasn't just a witness to his domestic abuse. She was a witness to his entire criminal enterprise. No wonder he couldn't let her go. She could bring his whole world crashing down. The headlights were right behind me now, blinding in my mirror. A big, dark-colored pickup truck, a Ford F-250, jacked up and aggressive. It pulled alongside me in the left lane, and I could see him. Rick. He was alone, his face illuminated by my dash lights, contorted in a mask of pure fury. He wasn't the calm, controlled man on the phone anymore. He gestured with his hand, a sharp, downward motion. Pull over dash. I kept my speed steady. 70 miles per hour. My hands were locked on the wheel. He laid on the horn, a long, angry blast, then swerved his pickup in front of me, trying to force me onto the shoulder. I held my line. A 40-ton truck loaded with almonds doesn't get pushed around easily. He was getting desperate, reckless. The professional cop was gone, and the monster was driving. What are we going to do? Sarah cried, shrinking down in her seat, her hands over her face. We're going to a place with lights and people, I said, my knuckles white on the steering wheel. My mind was racing, scanning the darkness ahead for an exit, a sign, anything. Then I saw it. A blue sign with a pictograph of a stick figure leaning against a tree. Rest area. 5 miles. Rick swerved in front of me again, this time hitting his brakes hard. I had to slam on my own, the whole rig groaning in protest, the trailer fishtailing slightly. The smell of hot rubber and burning brake pads filled the air. He was trying to get me to stop out here, in the dark, between exits. I saw my chance. He was too close, too focused on being the bully. I downshifted hard, the engine roaring like an angry bear, and swung the big Cascadia out into the left lane, the acceleration sluggish but steady. I was passing him. He was not expecting it. For a second, I had the lead. The rest area entrance was coming up fast on the right, maybe a quarter mile ahead. I knew I couldn't make the sharp turn of the exit ramp from the left lane. It was a gamble. A crazy one. Hold on, I yelled. I swerved back to the right, cutting him off just as he'd done to me, but with 80,000 pounds of momentum behind me. My right side tires screamed as they hit the grooved pavement of the exit ramp. The whole truck shuddered violently, and for a heart-stopping second I thought the trailer was going to roll. Behind me, I heard the tortured squeal of his tires as he tried to follow, to cut me off at the ramp. But he overcorrected. I saw his headlights spin wildly in my mirror as his big Ford fishtailed, lost traction, and slid sideways into the sandy median between the highway and the ramp. A cloud of dust erupted in the dark. He was stuck. I didn't slow down. I didn't look back. I rolled into the brightly lit rest area, past the cars and the other trucks whose drivers were sleeping, oblivious. I pulled into a spot right in front of the main building, under the lights, where everyone could see. I killed the engine. The sudden silence was deafening, broken only by the ticking of the cooling engine and our own ragged breaths. For a moment, we just sat there, our hearts hammering against our ribs. He's stuck back there, I said, my voice shaking slightly. He'll get out. He'll be on his radio now. He'll call for backup. Real backup. We don't have much time. I reached into my logbook and pulled out the emergency cash I always keep tucked away. A few $100, folded tight. I pressed it into her hand. There's a Greyhound station in El Paso, I said, my voice urgent and low. But you can't go there. He'll expect that. Get a ride back into Tucson. It's the last thing he'll expect. There's a bus station there. It's a big city. You can get a ticket to anywhere. Don't use your credit card. Don't use your real name if you can help it. Go somewhere green. Go back to school. Disappear, Sarah. Sam, I can't take your money, she sobbed, trying to push it back at me. It's not a gift, it's an investment, I said, looking her straight in the eye. You get yourself safe. You get yourself a new life. That's the return. Now go. I pointed to a family getting out of a minivan, stretching their legs. See them? A mom, a dad, 2 kids. They look safe. Walk over there. Ask them for a ride into Tucson. Tell them your car broke down. Tell them your boyfriend left you stranded. Tell them anything. Just get away from this truck. He's coming for me now, not you. She looked at me, her eyes filled with a terrifying mix of gratitude and sorrow. She leaned over and kissed my cheek, a quick, desperate press of her lips against my rough skin. Thank you, Sam. Then she was gone. She opened the door, slid out into the humid night, and, without looking back, blended into the anonymous bustle of the rest stop. I watched her approach the family. I watched her talk, watched her point back down the highway. I saw the mother nod with sympathy. I watched as Sarah got into the back of their minivan. A few minutes later, the minivan pulled out, heading back west, towards the city. Away from me. Away from him. I sat there for a long time. I made a pot of coffee on my little single burner. I waited. About 30 minutes later, 2 Arizona State Trooper cars rolled into the rest area, lights flashing, bathing my cabin strobing red and blue. They parked behind my rig, pinning me in. A young, serious-looking trooper with a face that hadn't seen enough of the world yet knocked on my door. I powered down the window. Problem, officer? Sir, we received a report concerning this vehicle. I need you to step out of the cab. I did as he said. They were professional, cautious. They put me in the back of one of their cars while they searched my truck. Of course, they found nothing. No sign of Sarah. No duffel bag. Just me, my logbook, and a full load of California almonds. They questioned me for over an hour. I played dumb, but a believable dumb. I was a trucker, minding my own business. A woman had asked for a ride at the truck stop diner. Said her car had broken down and she needed to get to Tucson to meet her sister. She seemed upset. I felt sorry for her. I dropped her off at a gas station on the edge of the city. I never got her last name. Was she in some kind of trouble? They had Rick there, too. His truck was being towed out of the median, its front end crumpled. His uniform was covered in dust, his face was a thundercloud of pure, impotent rage. He kept insisting I was lying, that I had abducted his disturbed wife. But his story had holes, and the troopers could see them. Why was he chasing me in his personal vehicle, off duty? Why did he run himself off the road? Why did he lie about a carjacking? Without Sarah there to corroborate his kidnapping story, and with no evidence in my truck, he just looked like a crazy, jealous husband who'd gone off the rails. The state troopers looked at him, then at me. I was calm. He was ranting. They were highway cops. They deal with messy lives every day. They knew a domestic dispute that had spilled onto the interstate when they saw one. Finally, after a long conversation with their sergeant on the radio, they let me go. Try not to pick up any more strangers, driver, the young trooper said, handing me back my license. His eyes held a flicker of understanding. It's a dangerous world. I walked back to my truck. I looked over at Rick. He was standing by his wrecked pickup, watching me. His eyes burned with a hatred so pure it was almost beautiful. It was a promise. He knew I'd won this round. And I knew that I'd just made an enemy for life. An enemy with a badge and a long memory. I had a feeling I wouldn't be taking any more loads through this part of Arizona for a long, long time. I got back in my cab, the familiar smell of diesel and old coffee a strange comfort. I started the engine, and its deep, steady rumble was the sound of my life resuming its rhythm. I pulled out of the rest stop, leaving the flashing lights and the angry man in my mirrors. I pointed my rig east, towards the sunrise that was just beginning to bleed a soft pink over the horizon. I drove all day, deep into the vast emptiness of West Texas, the adrenaline finally giving way to a bone-deep exhaustion. I felt like I'd aged a year since yesterday morning. I thought it was over. I thought I'd given her a head start, a fighting chance. I was wrong. That night, I was too wired to sleep in the cab. The confrontation, the chase, it was all replaying in my head. I needed a real bed, a shower that wasn't at a truck stop, a door with a lock. I pulled off in Van Horn, Texas, a dusty little town that exists only because of the highway. I found a single-story motel called the Oasis, which was a pretty generous name for it. The paint was peeling, and the pool was covered with a tarp that looked like it hadn't moved in a decade. It was perfect. Anonymous. I parked my rig in the oversized lot, checked in, and took a long, hot shower, letting the water wash away the sweat and fear of the last 24 hours. I was just about to fall into a cheap, lumpy bed when my phone rang. An unknown number again. My heart seized in my chest. I thought it was Rick. But I had to answer. Sam? The voice was a choked whisper. It was Sarah. Sarah? Where are you? Are you okay? No, she sobbed, her voice cracking with terror. Sam, I'm not okay. The family, they got scared. I told them a little of the story and they got spooked. They dropped me at a bus station in some little town. Benson, I think. I tried to buy a ticket, but I saw a car. Not his truck. A black sedan. It was circling. I think he called his friends, Sam. I ran. I'm hiding. I'm at a motel, the Sagebrush Inn. My blood ran cold all over again. The relief I'd felt was a lie. I hadn't gotten her away. I just dropped her in a different corner of the same spiderweb. Rick wasn't just a brute, he was connected. The men in the fancy cars. He hadn't just called the state troopers, he'd called his network. Stay there, I said, my voice hard. Lock the door. Barricade it with furniture. Don't answer it for anyone. I'm coming. No, Sam, don't. It's too dangerous. He'll be looking for you now, too. I'm already on my way, I said, and hung up. I was already pulling my boots back on. Benson was back west. Back towards Arizona. 150 miles in the wrong direction. I didn't care. I couldn't leave her there. I couldn't let her become another ghost story like Daniel's. The drive back was a nightmare. Every pair of headlights in my mirror felt like a threat. The desert night, usually my sanctuary, felt full of eyes. I pushed the Cascadia harder than I should have, the engine humming a steady, powerful song under my feet. It took me a little over 2 hours. The Sagebrush Inn was even worse than the Oasis. It was a collection of crumbling adobe bungalows that looked like they were being slowly reclaimed by the desert. I found her room, number 7, at the very back. I knocked softly, a specific rhythm. Sarah. It's Sam. The door opened a crack, held by a chain. I saw her terrified eyes. She fumbled with the lock and let me in. The room was small and smelled of dust and desperation. She'd pushed a dresser in front of the door. She threw her arms around me and just held on, shaking. I'm so sorry, she kept saying, over and over. I'm so sorry. It's not your fault, I said, holding her. None of this is your fault. We sat there for a long time, the cheap motel room feeling like the only safe place in the world. We talked. Really talked. She told me about the things she saw, the hushed phone calls, the license plates she'd memorized. He was using his position to escort shipments across county lines, making sure they were never stopped. She was the only person who could connect Deputy Rick Anderson to the men in the black sedans. I told her about Daniel. I didn't tell her everything, but I told her enough. I told her about my friend who vanished trying to help someone just like her. And I told her I wasn't going to let that happen again. In the dim light of that sad little room, we were just two people who were in way over our heads, finding a strange comfort in the shared danger. We have to go, I said, as the first hint of gray lightened the eastern sky. We have to be gone before sunrise. We'll take the back roads. I know a few. We crept out of the room. The air was cool and still. The world was holding its breath. We were halfway across the gravel lot, her duffel bag in my hand, my rig a dark mountain of safety just a few yards away. And that's when it happened. A vehicle turned into the motel parking lot from the highway, its engine a low, predatory rumble. The headlights sliced through the motel parking lot, freezing her against the passenger side of my rig. Her hand flew to her mouth, and her whisper was so quiet, so full of dread, it was louder than any scream. "Oh God, Sam. That's his truck." But it wasn't the wrecked Ford F-250. It was a brand new, black Dodge Ram, the kind with tinted windows and an antenna array on the roof that had nothing to do with listening to the radio. It wasn't Rick's personal truck. It was his business truck. The driver's side door opened. A man got out. He was tall, thin, wearing a suit that looked out of place in the desert dawn. He wasn't a cop. He was one of the men she'd described. He looked at us, his face calm, his eyes like chips of ice. He wasn't here to take her back. He was here to clean up a loose end. There was no time to think. "Get in!" I yelled, shoving her towards the passenger door. I threw her bag in behind her and scrambled up into the driver's seat, my heart trying to beat its way out of my chest. The man in the suit started walking towards us, his hand reaching inside his jacket. I didn't wait to see what he was pulling out. I cranked the engine and it roared to life. I threw the truck into gear and stomped on the accelerator, not even bothering to look back. I swung the rig out of the parking lot, the trailer tires skidding on the gravel, and aimed us east, away from him, away from Arizona. The black Ram was on us in seconds, its powerful engine easily keeping pace. This wasn't a chase of brute force like with Rick. This was something colder, more professional. He wasn't trying to run me off the road. He was just staying with me, a dark shadow in my mirrors, waiting for his moment. I knew I couldn't outrun him on the interstate. I took the first exit I saw, a sign for a state highway that probably hadn't been repaved since the 70s. We plunged into the dark, rolling hills of rural Texas, the big truck lumbering on the narrow two-lane road. He followed, his headlights a constant, malevolent presence behind us. For hours, we played a deadly game of cat and mouse on the backroads of America. I used every trick I knew. I used the truck's size to block him on narrow bridges. I kicked up dust on dirt roads to blind him. He was patient. He just kept coming. Finally, as the sun climbed higher, I saw a chance. We were approaching a larger town. I saw the signs for Dallas. A city. 1 million people. A place to get lost. I got back on the main highway, blending into the morning rush hour traffic. The black Ram was still there, a few cars back. I directed Sarah. The main bus terminal. Downtown. Be ready. I took an exit that led into the heart of the city, the skyscrapers looming over us. Traffic was a nightmare. A symphony of angry horns and screeching brakes. And it was our salvation. I made a series of quick, reckless turns, cutting off a city bus, running a yellow light that was mostly red. For a few precious seconds, I had a gap. I pulled up to the curb a block from the bus station, the air brakes hissing. "Go!" I yelled. "Don't look back. Buy a ticket for the first bus leaving, I don't care where it's going. Change buses in the next city. Keep moving. Lose the phone. Lose everything. Start over." I shoved the wad of emergency cash into her hands again. This time, she took it. Her eyes met mine. There were no words left. Just a deep, shared understanding of what we had survived. "Sam," she started. "Go," I said, my voice cracking. She squeezed my hand, a silent thank you, a silent goodbye. And then she was gone, disappearing into the anonymous river of people flowing down the sidewalk. I watched until I couldn't see her anymore. I pulled away from the curb, my hand shaking so bad I could barely hold the wheel. I looked in my mirror. The black ram was there, stopped at the intersection I'd just run. The man in the suit was looking at me. He didn't follow. He just watched me go. The message was clear. She was gone. It was over. For now. I never saw Sarah again. I never went back to Arizona. I avoid that whole corner of the country now, sticking to the northern routes or the deep south. Sometimes, late at night, when I'm rolling through some empty stretch of Wyoming or Montana, I think about her. I hope she found her green place. I hope she went back to school. I hope she's helping people. I saved her, I think. But I didn't get away clean. I crossed a line. I didn't just make an enemy of a small-town cop. I got a glimpse behind a curtain I was never supposed to see, at a world of quiet men in dark suits who keep the highways running with things other than freight. They know my face. They know my truck. They let me go, but they didn't forget. The road isn't just lonely anymore. It's haunted. And every set of headlights in my mirror feels like a memory, or a promise. And you can't ever outrun those.